Hey everyone, Paulo here. Let's just jump right in, huh? So, we see this article here from MSNBC, the Maddow blog. Okay, House Freedom Caucus has moved from fringe to center stage. Right, and yeah, okay, so here we go. House Freedom Caucus members were pariahs, but as the lines between the Republican fringe and the Republican mainstream blur, now they're ascendant. Woo, ascendant. Sorry, I had to fix the camera there. All right. So let's see here. Let's get rid of that. What do we got going on here? Let's see what they have to say. So why I picked this article because it's silly. Ascendant. But also I picked it because I quite like the Freedom Caucus. And so let's see what this propaganda newspaper has to say about the Freedom Caucus. For about 4 decades, far-right members of Congress joined a special group intended to be separate from the GOP mainstream. Okay, yeah, I don't disagree with that. It was called the Republican Study Committee. Now, I do disagree with this far-right nonsense, but okay, the Republican Study Committee, and it was home to the House most hardline ideologues. All right. But as regular readers know, because we tell you how to feel, a problem soon emerged. The more radicalized House GOP members became, the more The more radicalized House GOP members became, the more the Republican Study Committee included nearly everyone from the party's conference. Okay. I don't see where we're going with this because the Freedom Caucus is very small compared to the swamp monsters and the rest of the Republican Party. The study committee became fine from run-of-the-mill far-right members. Fine for run-of-the-mill right-wing members, sorry. But some really conservative members wanted an even more okay. Right. But some really conservative members wanted an even more exclusive invitation-only caucus that would exclude those who weren't quite far enough to the right. The House Freedom Caucus was born. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, this is just absurd. Like, what's super far right about the Freedom Caucus members? Explain it to me. Explain to me what... I mean, they're anti-globalist. That makes them super far right, I guess. As we've discussed for much of its existence, the Freedom Caucus was an annoyance to Republican leaders, and that's true, 100%. Yeah, because the Republican leaders and the Democrat leaders, there's really no difference between them, right? What's the difference between Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi? Explain it to me. All that happens is Mitch McConnell slows down the insanity coming from Nancy Pelosi. Like, he's just like pumping the brakes. That's all he does. Like, but he's on the same side. He's on the same side as Nancy Pelosi. So it's ridiculous. All right, sorry. Let's see. As we've discussed, for much of its existence, Freedom Caucus was an annoyance to Republican leaders who bristled as the group's members rejected their own party's bills they deemed insufficiently radical. No, they're trying to protect the American people is what they're trying to do. They're trying to get rid of a lot of this nonsense happening, which is why we see some of the amazing things that the Freedom Caucus got from McConnell. From prominent figures like former House Speaker John Boehner, lawmakers in the Freedom Caucus deserve to be seen as pariahs. But they're not. Axios took a look yesterday at the party's latest committee assignments. Members of the right-wing House Freedom Caucus are seeing the first dividends from the deal they struck with House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. You know why they're so salty? You know why MSNBC is so salty? Because AOC and her group of midwits that run the the squad were too weak and too afraid to do this to Nancy Pelosi in 2020. This is why they're so salty. They're seeing what AOC could have achieved on their side, and they're upset. The plum postings for Republican rebels fulfill a key concession McCarthy made, handing conservatives greater influence over the GOP conferences, congressional probes, and legislative agenda. A Washington Post reporter noted that the Freedom Caucus represents less than 25% of the House Republican Conference. Yeah, way less. Way less. But Freedom Caucus members will now hold 38% of the GOP seats on the influential House Oversight Committee. Well, that's what you can do when you get people who are willing to stand up to the machine. Look at how that works. When people stand up to the machine, they get things accomplished. That's what they're so upset about. What's more, for the far-right contingent, more good news appears to be on the way. NBC News noted yesterday that McCarthy also appears to have committed to giving Freedom Caucus members 3 seats on the Speaker-controlled Rules Committee, which has great influence over bills before they reach the floor. Ooh. But it's not just committee assignments worth examining, it's also committee chairs. My review of the panel lineups found that 2 Freedom Caucus members, Republican reps, Jim Jordan of Ohio and Mark Green of Tennessee, will wield power gavels, leading the Judiciary and Homeland Security Committees respectively. Oh, be afraid. Be very, very afraid, MSNBC readers. At the same time, 15 other Freedom Caucus members, Andy Biggs, Andy Harris, Barry Moore, Clay Higgins, David something or other, Ken Buck, Matt Rosendale, Michael Cloud, Mike Johnson, David Schweikert, Mike Johnson, Morgan Griffith, Ralph Norman, Randy Weber, Russ Fulcher, Tony Nels, and Warren Davidson will chair House subcommittees. And if we widen the aperture a bit, the faction has scored other successes outside the chamber. South Carolina's Mick Mulvaney was a Freedom Caucus member before Donald Trump put him in charge of overseeing the Office of Management and Budget, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and ultimately the White House. Wow. We're in scary territory now, MSNBC readers. Let us all be afraid. Florida's Ron DeSantis was a Freedom Caucus member before being elected governor. Oklahoma's Jim Bridenstine was also a Freedom Caucus member before being tapped to lead NASA. On the surface, it stands to reason the far-right members will have influence over a far-right party. But circling back to our earlier coverage, it's striking just how frequently we're confronted with these circumstances. Headlines about blank has moved from the Republican fringe to the Republican mainstream because you make all this stuff up. You make all this stuff up. I mean, I guess this is sort of true. But the Republican mainstream is just, they're basically the Democrats from 10 years ago, right? So who cares? Jeff Sessions was considered a fringe figure in GOP politics, but Trump made him the Attorney General. Ugh. During his congressional career, Mike Pence earned a reputation as something of a lawmaker on the radical periphery, with a voting record well to the right of House members such as Michelle Bachmann and Louis Gohmert, but Trump chose him as a vice presidential running mate. Some figures from Breitbart News labored on the fringes right up until they secured jobs in the Trump White House. Stephen Miller spent years on the political fringe before he started shaping the sitting former president's agenda. Trump himself was seen as a fringe political figure, best known for championing a racist conspiracy theory right up until he was elected president. What is wokeism again? Calling everything racist and fascist and white supremacist until you own that, until you own it. As we're seeing this week, House Freedom Caucus has also made its transition from the fringes to center stage. Well, this is a whole bunch of nonsense, and they're just trying to make everyone afraid. But the House, what are they even trying to do? They're trying to weaken the ridiculous federal government from infringing on your life. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to weaken the government. So good for them, right? I mean, they're trying to hold people accountable. One, they're trying to get access to actual, like they said, seats on caucuses so that they can actually affect the government, because they were barred from it by Nancy Pelosi. So, I don't. This is just silly. This whole thing is just silly. Anyways, MSNBC is good for a chuckle and a laugh, and I feel sorry for the readers who really believe this stuff and don't actually get educated on what's actually happening and what actual things, like, for example, MTG wants, what she's trying to accomplish, what I almost called him Michael, but that's not right, Thomas Massey is trying to do. And I mean, they just, there was a bunch of, they didn't really say anything. Like, all they do is they call them far right over and over and over again. They don't explain why they're far right, because they know that if they actually explained what their views were, no one would consider them far right. Anyways, thank you for tuning in. If you liked what you saw, please like, comment, subscribe below. Let me know what you like. Let me know what you don't like. Let me know how I can improve. And thank you for tuning in. Have a good day.